Hey guys, thanks for tuning in and welcome back to the channel. Today's episode is another one in the series of metal bending tips and techniques. The first episode, if you saw, we were going over just your standard fascia profile. In this episode here, we're going to build a little bit on that and we're going to do what's called a Gable flashing. So it should look something like this. This is the profile we're kind of talking about. It's not on the side where the eaves are going to be. This is going to go on the front of the house, let's say on the end of a dormer or something like that. You're going to have the same basic profile on the bottom, but we're going to give it this little bump out here. Just a little bit of an extra detail there. So we haven't done the color to color bend, but before we get to the bending, let's get down and let's draw it out and let's figure out what our measurements are going to be. Okay, before we get to the actual metal bending part, like I said, we've got to go and we've got to draw this out on paper. We need to get our measurements so we can transfer that over to the material. So come on a bit closer here and we'll go through a standard construction of Gable flashing. So here what you're kind of looking at is a typical gable end. Okay, we've got our 2x6 coming up both sides. We've got a couple pillars for supports that I've drawn in here. What we need to figure out though is this dimension here. Again, so I mentioned that it was a 2x6. So we know that this distance here, it's going to be about 5.5 inches. Again, we're measuring off a 90-degree angle from the bottom. Don't forget though that that profile for the soffit is going to come down like this and back up, down like this and back up. So we need to make sure that we include that in our measurement. So we're going to stick with our standard 3/8 of an inch like we did in the last video. Up here we've also got our sheathing, which is about 7/16. Let's call it 1/2 inch just to make this a little bit easier for us. So we've got 5.5, we've got the extra 1/2 inch, 6, now we're sitting at 3/8, so 6 3/8 roughly is where we should be. Okay, you got a little bit of a give there, about 1/8 of an inch or so. So if we draw out our profile like I showed you in the beginning of the video there, so we still want that 1.5 inches on the bottom with our 1/2 inch safety lip. We're going to come up, we're going to give a little bit of a bump out, and we're going to return back in. Now what we do with this whole dimension here, this should equal this dimension that we just figured out, 6 3/8. So I'm going to call it 6.5 just to make it a little bit easier for us. And I'm going to divide that into a 4 and a 2, and then the remaining fraction I'm going to divide that up. So I'm going to call this 4 1/4. I'm going to call this 2 1/4, and then both of these will be 3/4. And if we add that up, we get our total profile, our total width. So we got 1.5 inches plus 1/2, that's 2, plus 4 1/4, that's 6 1/4, plus the 3/4 makes 7, plus 2 1/4 makes 9 1/4, plus the extra 3/4 makes a 10-inch wide piece. So let's transfer that onto the material and let's get to our bending. Okay, just like last time, we're going to start with our material. So we're going to uncoil it to the length that we need. Now normally by this time I already know the length that I need. I'm going to give myself a few extra inches just in case I need to square something up to make it straight. So I'm going to take my tape measure, I'm going to pull off the end here, and if it was a 6-foot, 7-foot piece, whatever the case is, I would keep going and mark it. But for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to come down and use a 3-foot piece here. I'm just going to hold that with my hand. And again, you can cut this with a whole bunch of different things. I prefer just using a pair of long nose snips. It gives you a nice straight, clean cut. Okay, so we can take our measurements, put our piece in the brake. Okay, just snug it down. We can set them right here so we remember what we're trying to do. Again, doesn't matter which way you like to do this, you can pull it off either way. Just make sure that you do this the same every time. So we're going to start with our hem. That was the 1/2 inch hem. And then we're adding as we go. So plus the 1.5 inches. Okay, our next is 4 1/4, so we add that on. That gets us to 6 1/4, the 3/4 bump out, the 2 1/4 face, and the 3/4 return. Again, I put the little arrowhead because usually I'm doing a left and a right piece. And at that point I would continue. I'd say the 1/2, 2, okay, 6 1/4, the 3/4, the 2 1/4, and then finally the 3/4 return. Again, if you wonder why I put the arrowheads, there's a lot of lines on here. That's just so I can differentiate the beginning and the end of a piece. Now I mentioned earlier we do have one color to color bend right on the inside here. Now what I want to make sure is I want to make sure to put a cut there. That transfers that mark to the other side of the material. So I don't want to flip this and remeasure. I'm going to come in here. Okay, that was a 1/2 one. That was the 4 1/4 face. I'm going to put a snip there because I'm going to be bending it color to color at that point, and I'm also going to put a cut at the end of the piece. I'm only going to do one piece, so I'm not going to bother cutting the rest of this. That's one side. Let's get the other side going. Okay, so same thing like I did on the other side. Okay, so we got a 1/2 inch, and the 1.5 inch makes 2, 6 1/4, 7, 9 1/4, 10. Okay, I'm not going to draw the rest out because I don't need it. Again, we know that this mark here was our inside bend color to color, and that is the end of the piece we're making. Okay, so we've got our numbers transferred over. Let's get in the brake, score it, and let's start bending this. Okay, so let's get to the bending part. You got the 2 arrowheads there that I talked about earlier. That's the end of the piece. We're gonna slide those in. If you noticed in the video, I cut with reds on one side, greens on the other. That's so I can slide it to the edge, slide it to the edge, and it stops. Clamp it down tight. Use a straight blade, whatever you like, it doesn't matter. Score, score. Score it a few times if your knife is dull. Remember though, like we said in the last video, don't come across the front of the brake and get into the hinge here, because you're going to wear that hinge out very quickly. Okay, score it now. Grab the handle, fold it up, and you just want to push the piece back down lightly, and just go back and forth with it. Gives you a nice clean brake, nice clean edge. There's nothing rolled. Okay, you're not going to cut yourself on this piece of material. First bend we're going to make in almost every case is we've got to do the hem first. So that first 1/2 inch mark we made, you're going to bring it out, you're going to line it up with a stainless steel strip. Okay, put it where you want it to go. Lock in place, you're going to fold this all the way around. Okay. Make sure it's nice and tight. It makes the next part a little bit easier. Loosen off the clamp, flip it around, lock it back down, and we need to fold this and flatten this right out. So grab the handle. Okay. You got a nice clean edge. You're not going to cut yourself on that, and it's nice when it's fully installed. Next one is the 1.5 inch on the bottom. Okay. That's the piece that hides all the screws for the soffit. Okay, again, line your lines up. We want to try and make a 90-degree bend with this one. It's always better to go a little shy than too far if you're not sure where the 90 degree is. Always though, pull it out, take a look. Again, we're looking at the relationship from here to here. You see how it looks like just a hair past? It's not a problem. Stick it back in the brake, and we can actually open it up just a little bit. And we don't need very much. We take it out, have a look again. Now that relationship there is probably bang on 90. Okay, so up until this point, there's been nothing different from the standard fascia up into the Gable Flashing. But if you come in a little bit closer, you remember I made those marks there where we put the cuts in. Okay, and that cut, the whole purpose of that was to transfer that mark to the other side of the material. Now what we're going to do is we're going to slip it in color side up. And that stops on that stainless steel strip, okay, so I can't mess it up. Lock it in place. Now I need to bend this up to 90 degrees. And again, right here you want to make sure that you get this relationship to 90 degrees. If you can see that, it's actually too far past. It's very hard to fix later, very easy to fix now. So slide it back in the brake. Okay. Open it back up. Just slowly slide your hand back and forth with a little bit of pressure outwards. And just have a look at it. Okay. So we're pretty close. Look all the way down. It looks pretty good there. Now I'm going to flip it back over. Color side down. And if you do notice, this brake will bend from the stainless steel strip to the edge of that vinyl exactly 3/4 of an inch. You don't technically need to make a mark here because it does exactly 3/4 for you. I put the mark there because sometimes there's play in the hinge. I want to make sure my pieces are perfect, so put the piece in tight, clamp it down, and again, just coming up to that 90 degree mark. You want this to be 90. Okay. And the last bend, you don't have to take it all the way out, you just slide it back because we're doing that final 2 1/4 with a 3/4 return. Line up your marks on the stainless steel, log it down, flip it up to 90, and you should have yourself a Gable Flashing profile. So 1.5 inches, 4 1/4, 3/4, 2 1/4, and the 3/4 return back. And if we take it over here, and we said our measurement was 6.5, we're sitting at 6 just a hair over, 6 9/16. So again, you do lose a little bit of material on those folds, but I think we're gonna be able to squeeze that in just fine. Okay, so that wraps it up for our gable profile. Basically what ended up happening was we took our standard fascia profile of the eaves, threw a couple details in there. Again, just that inside bend was the major difference between these two. And now we've got this nice looking, it's nice and strong for your gable end. And the reason why we do this one as opposed to this profile is because there's no support at the end. I mean, you can roll the lip at the top and that's fine, but usually what happens is when the sun comes out and this heats up and then cools down overnight, you can get a little bit of oil canning or rippling effect in the metal. And it just doesn't look good. It's not aesthetically appealing. So we take this piece, we add this little bump out in here because it makes this piece a lot stronger and it drastically reduces the amount of oil canning that actually this piece will experience. So there you have it. That's the end of this piece. If you've liked what you see in the video, guys, please subscribe. And if there's anything else that you'd like to see, please comment below and I'll do my best to try and get that in a video for you. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you next time.